We are back. Woo! It is Thursday. How you guys like my new intro? I hope you love it. Welcome back to another day in the life of an entrepreneur, and you are listening or watching live to the Entrepreneur Life Show, where we bring thought-provoking, entertaining conversations with amazing guests that you can connect with, and they share their stories. So we have some really wonderful and great guests today for you guys. Let's start off with making sure that you guys subscribe and make sure you go to entrepreneurlifeshow.com. Check out the calendar for all of the past guests and the upcoming guests so you can connect with them. And maybe you might have missed a show. You were maybe listening on one of your very favorite podcast app and you want to see my guests live. Make sure you go over to the page, entrepreneurlifeshow.com, and you can check it out on the YouTube channel. Also, comment, connect with them, learn everything that you want about them, as well as we have exciting news that starting this month, we will also be streaming live on Roku and Fire TV. So make sure you subscribe so you know when we're going to start streaming. How exciting is that, right? I mean, we are just growing. And so, but I'm so thankful that everybody who has been subscribing and following, especially those who have been listening to us on the podcast, the downloads are amazing. That means you really enjoy the guests. They're entertaining, they're educational, they're inspiring. The agents that we deal with, the publicists and the PR agents, they are the best because they are bringing us these guests. So I always want to thank them, give them high five, thank you, because people are really loving and downloading. Okay, so I forgot. For those, we don't have any more giveaways. Sorry, everything's gone. For the CDs and stuff, I forgot to mention, and the books from some of our prior guests, they're gone. And so I don't have any more. Maybe I can get some later. I know some people were asking, but they kind of went fast because there are some great, amazing guests. So, you can still go to the website, though, and connect with them and learn how to get the CD or book directly yourself. Okay, so who do we have on today as my guest is Dr. Lisa Griot, widely acclaimed leadership expert, speaker, and author, and she's here to share with us some equipment and tools that we can utilize in our daily lives, professional and I say personal. And there is a separation. And some people like myself, who is a business owner and entrepreneur, and when you're working for yourself and you're the boss, sometimes you don't know how to pivot and make that change. So let's bring Dr. Lisa Griot onto the platform and say hello and get some questions. Hello, how are you?
Hi, Rose. I'm great. I'm so thrilled to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I am extremely happy to have you on the show. You are, because I watched a few of your interviews, and so you're definitely an expert in your field and well-traveled, I must say. I'm jealous about how well-traveled you are. But I did want to start off by asking you a question in regards to, if you don't mind jumping right in, because I was ready. I was excited to get started.
Let's go, girl. Let's do this.
Okay. So I know you bring a unique and innovative kind of perspective when it comes to the relationship between personal and professional development. What would you say is the hardest part when it comes to, like, for someone like myself? I am also an entrepreneur. I'm a business owner. I have staff. So I have my professional life of having those challenges, but then I have my personal challenges. And when you're a business owner, trying to separate the two can be quite difficult because you're the business owner and you're trying to, and it's easy for us to say as for our employees and our staff members, don't bring your personal challenges to work. But how do you do that as a business owner? Do you know what I'm saying?
I do. And you know what? And I still struggle with this, but I promise you I've gotten so much better. It's about setting boundaries, right? You have to set boundaries because there are only 24 hours in the day. You don't get any more. You don't get a 25th or 26th hour, 24 hours in the day. And, part of that time you have to eat, you have to sleep, spend time with our families. And the rest of that time, we're generally working because we do everything as entrepreneurs. But I promise you have to set some boundaries because after a while, the work that we do and the reason we got into this business of being a business owner doesn't become fun anymore. So setting those boundaries, right? Setting those boundaries is so critical. And I mean, that really took me like a long time to do and to do it well. And like I said, I sometimes still struggle with it, but you have to set those boundaries so you can have a life, actually. So yeah, setting boundaries is like the biggest thing that gave me some time back.
And I'd say in your long years in the industry, you've been, I mean, you're well traveled, as I said when I just met you, was very jealous because you've been to some amazing places. Not like most of us just go to Atlanta or New York, but you're well traveled. Athens, Greece, Jakarta, Indonesia, the Republic of Czech. So I would say, in the comparison of us here in the U.S., what would you say the indifferences are when it comes to entrepreneurship, business relationship? And the specific reason I asked that is, I'm biracial. I have worked for quite a bit of Asians. My mother's Filipino, but I've worked with quite a bit of Asians, Chinese and Korean. And I find that when working with them, they're more built on relationships and developing relationships prior to business. So in your travel, what would you say if there are any differences on how we are here in the US and what we consider business relationships are and how we conduct business versus other countries like where you travel?
So the biggest difference that I see, and especially in Asia, and like you said, I do a lot of work in Southeast Asia, Thailand, Indonesia, uh, Singapore, and the biggest difference is there's two differences. The one that you mentioned about the relationships, and their relationships like blur. There's no separation from being a personal relationship and then a business relationship. They're all one. So there isn't that delineation. And the other difference is that more of their families are involved in the businesses. So, I might start a business, right? But I would be bringing in like my family, my kids, my parents, my nieces, my nephews, whomever would be part of the business. And the interesting thing too, like I said, I'm going to go back to the relationships because I think that is a really big one. Without there not being that separation between, okay, this is my business relationship, this is my personal relationship, and the two never meet. No, the lines are so blurred. The relationships, there's no real separation because the thinking for them is if you're a friend, we have a personal relationship, then I can trust you. So naturally, I'm going to enter into a business relationship with you. So it just makes more sense for them to do it that way. Right. So those are the two biggest differences I see in terms of how they have the relationships and how like they bring their families into to the work that they do. So,
Okay.
and they also know how to take time off more so than, than
Right.
entrepreneurs here in the US. It's like we find ourselves, I mean, we're working these 80, 90-hour weeks. They know how to take time. They know how to set boundaries and they know how to take time. They know how to enjoy vacations. Like they actually take vacations and enjoy them. So, which I always think we could like take a page out of their book on learning some of those things. So yeah.
So myself, being in the accounting industry, most people know that, of course, the reason I initially started my podcast was really for bringing on guests educating me. And then I found that, and I thought, for me, I thought, oh, bringing business owners and they're kind of sharing their journey. And you're a business owner no matter what field you are, an entrepreneur, whether you're an entertainer, a comedian, whatever, because it's your brand, it's how you do it, it's how you make your money. And I thought that people would be interested, but surprisingly so. They are interested. And knowing that you have finished your BS in financial management from Temple University, and MS organizational development, what would you say, what was your career plan to do what you're doing now is why you initially got that background education? Or was it just something that you pivoted and said, you know what, I can do this and start mentoring, helping people?
Not at all. Are you kidding? There wasn't a thought in my mind that I'd be doing what I'm doing now. And, and as an undergrad, I was in finance. I have never actually worked a day in my life in that actual discipline, in that field. So, so I always tell like younger folks, hey, listen, you know what? You can change your mind and it's okay. Just a couple of things, be able to think and be able to learn. But no, actually started my career in sales. And for all intents and purposes, I thought that I would just be in sales the rest of my life. And life is interesting, right? So I ended up doing a sales training class for someone, and then I got another request, and then I found out like, wow, I really like this. So there was something to that. And I'm going to pause for a second there because I think it's important to pay attention to the things that give you joy, because that's really telling you something. And so I started doing more of it. And then someone asked me if I could do some leadership training. And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? So I did it, found out I really like that. And I was so interested in how leaders can change an organization, whether it's a for-profit corporation, whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's a school, church, etc. I just became fascinated. So again, I was paying attention to where my interests lie and where my joy came from. And then I realized, well, you know what? That can be a career, and or I can make a business out of this. So by paying attention to where my joy came from, like where I would spend hours reading on things or doing something, and I also found out that I happen to be pretty good at it too. So that's a plus, right? To be good at something that you like. And oh, by the way, can I make a career, or can I make money and monetize this? So those are the things that I thought about. And then I started thinking about like, what are all the things that are my strengths? Like, and what I mean by that is, what are the things that I do naturally that people have told me that I'm good at, that it's like part of my DNA, I don't have to think about it. It's like breathing. You don't think about it. So those are my strengths. And I made a list of them. So, and I said, okay, these are the things that, I'm pretty good at. How do I leverage that into a business? And so again, like I said, I just stopped and paid attention to the things that I do well. I asked people what they saw, and then I said, where do I get my joy from? So that came with crafting the business that I'm in today. So yeah, that's kind of like the nuts and bolts of my story.
Okay, so my next question is because this was and doing a little bit of research on you as being part of the 25 most influential Black women in business. I mean, to get to that level and to that exposure, and just hearing your story out, that really wasn't your plan. It was just like, you're going along with what your profession was. And then someone's like, well, hey, how about speaking and being a leadership expert? How did it feel? How did that transition occur? And to where, I mean, because that's a really influential place to be and to be recognized.
So, and it was a great honor for me as well. And how that transpired is like, so I started doing a lot of mentoring, and I started doing a lot of coaching and, leadership development. And I started, looking at more women, because what I was noticing is that there weren't a lot of women, and in particular, there weren't a lot of women of color in like senior leadership roles in organizations. And I was puzzled by that, because I'm like, why not? Why aren't I seeing more women who look like me in these senior roles? So again, started doing some research, and then I said, okay, you know what? I can start to help that situation. So by coaching women and by, creating opportunities for them to be developed. So that led into one thing, and it led into another. And then I started seeing the fruits of that labor. I started seeing more women become C-suite leaders. I started seeing more women. Some of them decided just to open their own business. But so it was along that path that kind of meandered and took me there. And like, again, it's like, okay, where's the need, and where do I, get my joy from, and what am I good at? So that's kind of how I, that trajectory. And again, I'm constantly doing research. And for anyone who's an entrepreneur, we always have to stay on top of our game. We always have to stay on top of our game, regardless what's the latest in the industry, what are the best practices that are coming out. Because if you think about it this way, you wouldn't really have a lot of confidence in your doctor or your surgeon if they didn't stay up on different trends and the latest, in the science. So we're no different. We're business owners. We're our own brand. So it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we stay abreast of everything that's happening, because we're the walking, talking brand of our business. We're the face of it. So
I'm glad you kind of brought that up, because coming out of COVID, and really, this isn't just really a COVID question, but coming out of COVID, I think people are now more um, are taking more interest in how their businesses ran, and preparing, and how to forecast, how to budget, how to and maybe even I wouldn't use the word pivot, but in rebranding, and changing what they've done. And so, what advice would you give? Now, for me in the accounting industry, I was very fortunate that it really didn't affect me, because people needed my services during, and I'd say before, during, and even after, because now they're having to make those forced adjustments. But I'm finding people just weren't prepared.
So, you know what, so Rose, I see a lot of this now too, because we're in a really interesting time. And like the jobs report just came out for the week last week, and the jobs report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics is coming out tomorrow. But right now, there are 11 million jobs that are available, 11 million jobs that are vacant, right? And so that to me is just staggering. So if people are in the market for a job, there couldn't be a better time, because this is the advantage that employees and job seekers have. So we're in this really weird anomaly time that it's almost like the revenge of employees, because they can start calling the shots. And if they're working for an employer who perhaps doesn't have the best culture there, people were saying, I'm out of here, see you later. And you can't blame them, because they have options. People have options, with gas prices being $5, $6,
Mhm.
$7 a gallon. And people are saying, hey, I need you in the office. You have to be back in the office. And if the office is a half hour or hour drive, you're asking a lot of people. So they're like, you know what? I have other options. So they're taking those options and they're leaving. And the same with business owners. COVID was horrendous. It was horrible. It was unimaginable on so many levels. And and inside of that, I always say too, inside of that, there's also some opportunity. Inside of like any crisis, and I'm not making light of COVID at all, because we've all lost people or know people that have lost people through this tragedy. What I am saying is that let's look and find that light through it all, because out of that, there are going to be people who need the services as entrepreneurs that we provide, and or there's ways for us to pivot our business. So for example, a lot of people are saying, hey, my business used to be X. So now, like, for example, I know a lot of businesses they were sit down restaurants, come in, sit down, take an order. So now a lot of them have said, hey, first of all, we can't get employees to come work for us, so because they have so many other options. So now a lot of them have said, okay, I'm going to pivot to catering. So now they've made that pivot to becoming a catering service versus it being a full service restaurant. And some of them are even saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to barter my services with, some of my vendors.
Right.
And, I know in particular, there was a pizza restaurant out in California, and having a hard time getting employees to come work. So what they were doing is, all right, they were bartering for services with some of their accountants, with some of their legal folks. So again, getting those creative ways to do business. And as entrepreneurs, we all need to be supporting each other. And that's a really big point with me. We need to support each other. Right?
I'm glad you brought up employee employer, because I don't think that some, from what I'm finding, um, my question is, how important is understanding your employees, making them feel wanted versus needed, and how we can utilize employees to learn about our business to potentially increase our revenue and or what is lacking in our business. Because I find quite a few, when I was in the work field, when I was working for other people, we seldom even had meetings or company meetings, or it was just if the evaluation came up. And as a business owner, I said to myself, I'm always going to have a company meeting, and I am always going to have more than an evaluation, but just have a conversation aside from just their evaluation. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I have so many thoughts in that. And the first one is, if you want just compliance from your employee, that's one thing. They'll
Right.
comply. You set the expectation. You tell them what you want done. It gets done. Now, if you want commitment from your employees, then that's a different story. The way you get commitment is by asking their opinions, asking them how to solve problems. And I think where a lot of employers miss the boat is that their employees are often the closest to the customer. So they know better ways of doing something. They have a better way, a more productive way, less expensive way of getting something done. But we don't ask them for their opinions. We don't ask them for their advice and what they think, right? So we're missing a lot of free, valuable information. And then by asking people for their input and by using it, people feel, first of all, they feel like you've listened to them.
Right.
And then they feel like, you're investing in them because you're asking for their opinions and you're asking them what they think, and they feel a part of the business versus just telling them what to do. And, the communication, what you said too about having meetings, communication is the biggest issue in organizations. Right? It's either miscommunication, it's no communication, right? So again, it's critical. It's critical for employees to know what's expected of them. It's also critical to have, timely conversation. And, just the little niceties go a long way. Greeting people, saying hello, goodbye, how's your day, how's your weekend? Those kind of things go a long way, because after all, we're all human beings working together. And, we should never forget that. And you also mentioned something too about, getting into new markets. Well, your employees, like I said, they're the closest to the customer. They can give you new ideas on, especially like if you're in a food service business,
Right.
what the trends are, what customers are asking for. And perhaps, depending on if you live or if you're in an area that has a lot of different nationalities, that is another great way to tap into your employees, to ask what you should be doing. So employees are such a wealth of information that we oftentimes don't ask for their opinion or their insights.
You're
I
so
don't know.
right. I did want to talk about you recently authored a book, Don't Abdicate the Throne. And I was kind of like, I wanted to find out, where did you get that title? What did you mean by that? Can you tell us a little bit of what led you to write that, but really what that title is? That title says a lot, actually. It's very, it says it all just in this title.
I'm laughing because I'm sitting here giggling because the backstory to that is I finished the book. And then, my editor was going through it, looking for just misspellings and everything. She goes, "Oh, by the way, what are you going to call the book?" I'm like, "I don't know." It's just like, "You need a title, Lisa." And I'm like, "I know, but I don't know what to call it." And so I've been always saying this phrase, probably for the last 20 years, don't abdicate the throne, don't abdicate the throne. And, what I mean by it is don't give up your power. But I heard that phrase, 2 decades ago, and it just stuck with me, right? Because visually, there was like this visual sitting on the throne and not giving up your power. So in my head, it stuck with me. And she's like, "I got it. Don't abdicate the throne." She goes, "You've been saying that for years." And I'm like, okay, there it is. So that is how the title came about. And, and it's also fitting because one of the chapters in the book is talking about how we give away our power too easily and to stop it. Stop giving away your power. And we often think that we don't have any. And like Alice Walker did a beautiful quote years ago. She said, the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any, right?
Mm-hmm.
And far too often, we think we don't have power, right? Or we're like, I don't want anything to do with power because we're thinking negatively about power. We're thinking about the abuse of power. But I say to everyone, listen to me. You have power. Power is not just money or someone's position, right?
Right.
There's many dimensions to power. I'm just going to talk about a couple of them that, we don't think about so often. Connections is a dimension of power that's underused. Information is another dimension of power that's underused. And expertise, another dimension of power. And I'm going to go back to connections for just a moment, but the power of connections is so huge that there are companies, well-known companies that we know that have made billions of dollars by connecting people. Think about Facebook, think about LinkedIn. Their primary job, what they do is connect people. So there are people out there listening, on this podcast that are like, oh, I do that all the time. I connect people together. I love doing that. So you have connection power. Use it. Don't minimize it. There are people out there who have a lot of information, right? They have a lot of information in their head. They're always reading. They're always watching YouTube. They're always doing something or documentaries. So they know a whole lot of stuff. Or you may be that person who with a couple of keystrokes can get you any bit of information you want. So information power is having access, knowing how to get power, knowing who has it, or it resides with you, right? And so there are people out there listening that have information power because they know, oh yeah, I can get that for you. Oh, I can get that for you. And they know people. So don't minimize your information power. And then the last one is your expertise. So everyone listening has an area of expertise. And that's something that you do better than the people around you. So when I look at you, Rose, accounting is your expertise. That is your superpower. You are the sensei of accounting. So you know all these things with numbers. You can make numbers sing. So that's you, right? So you have expertise there. I have expertise in leadership development and coaching, and other people have expertise in, they understand how to, like, technology. You hand them your phone and they can do everything, put it together in 5 minutes, right? So it's really honing in, what are those areas of expertise that you have? And everyone has them. Everyone has them. But the problem is we minimize our power because it doesn't look like money or a high position. So like the power thing, I mean, I'm so passionate about that because far too often we minimize our power and we go around thinking, I don't have any power. Well, everyone who's listening to this podcast, you have power and you have a lot of it. Stop minimizing it, right? Start to leverage it. And the other big chapter in my book that I'm so passionate about, it's about asking for what you want. And we don't ask for what we want enough. And especially women, right? Some of you guys too, you don't ask, but we don't ask for what we want. And part of that comes from like the early messages or the early scripts we heard growing up, by our parents or our guardians or whomever raised us, right? They told us when we were young, no, you shouldn't ask for this, and don't ask because it'll seem weak, or just do what you need to do. And, if you do what you need to do, things will come to you. Well, that was good information for us, right? That was good while we were younger because it kept us safe. And, whomever told it to us, that's what they were trying to do, to keep us safe and to ensure we had an opportunity to thrive. Well, at some point, that information, that message is no longer helpful to us. Because now we need to ask for what we want. We need to ask for help. We need to ask for funding. We need to ask for that big contract. We need to start asking for what we want. And I oftentimes find this is like a really difficult thing for people to start doing. And so, but it's like a muscle. So I tell them, okay, start small. Start asking, ask around the house, ask your kids, ask your partner, whomever, to do something for you that normally you would do, and just see the response, right? So start small, ask somebody for $5 that is, you're related to, right? So, and people are like, are you kidding me? I can't do that. I'm like, yeah, you can, because it's a small thing. You're asking somebody for $5. How are you going to ask for a contract that's worth millions of dollars? Right. So and again, it's a muscle, Rose. Asking is a muscle. So the more you do it, the easier it becomes. Yeah.
I'm
and I have to
you've heard closed mouths don't get fed. So
Yes. Right. And I will tell you, I struggled with this for the longest about asking, because I mean, I grew up, my mom, my dad just said, no, you don't ask for anything. You become self-sufficient, you do it all on your own, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we revere our parents, or we revere our grandparents, or whomever, raised us. So we're like, we carry that message all through life, right? And we just like, no, well, mama said, or daddy said, or grandmama said. And it's like, yes, they did, but they're not living where we're living now, in the times that we're living now. So their message was absolutely spot on earlier in our life. But I always say, stop and ask yourself, does that still hold true? Is that still true for me now? So ask for what you want, right? And know that you have power. Those are the two biggest things.
You said all of that because, and this is just as a Black woman myself, I would say the stereotype is, when it comes to Black women in business or growing up, it's always be independent, don't ask, do it yourself. You're supposed to be strong and assertive, the backbone of the family and the man, and doing it all. So so what you said says a lot. Is like, sometimes we need help too, and it's okay to say I need help.
And I will tell you, that is, Rose, and that is so true. And I think sometimes we do ourselves a disservice by always claiming that we're the strong Black women. Well, yeah, we are, and we make it look easy, but there are times when we need help too, right? There are times when we need to just take good self-care. And very often, there's such a stigma around taking good mental care or asking for help when, you're not feeling like your emotional self, right? I mean, you would go to the doctor if you broke your leg, if you cut yourself, or, you harmed yourself in some way. So why is there a stigma around getting help when, emotionally and mentally you're not doing well? And not for nothing, but we have all experienced so much trauma coming out of the last 24 months with COVID. And oh, by the way, it's still going on. But there's right. So there's so much trauma that we've experienced coming from that. And inside of COVID, there was also an economic pandemic, which is still playing out, as well as a social injustice pandemic. Everything with George Floyd, and oh, by the way, beginning back in 2013 with Trayvon Martin. So this didn't just happen. So we're carrying so much trauma, and yet, and still we rise. So there's a lot there that we need to start doing, especially when we say we're asking for help. And, and for all of your listeners that perhaps may be working for other people or working in corporate jobs, the other thing is, you need to start asking for that promotion, asking for that raise, because otherwise it's like you said, closed mouths don't get fed. Ask, because we just assume people know. I'm like, no, ask for what you want. You need to ask. Let them tell you no, right? Let them tell you no. But more oftentimes you're going to be surprised.
I agree with that. Americans are so in fear of not taking a vacation and asking for the extra. And just feeling like we're, I guess, more inventory versus assets. At least I used to feel that way myself. Now, this is a random question.
Okay.
As a random question about leadership, and you say, when is the right time to talk and the right time to listen? And then describing your leadership skills. So I guess that's two questions. Your leadership style, let's say that.
Okay. So I actually think people should do far more listening than they do talking. And, I think it's the inverse. I think people talk, 60% and listen, maybe 40%. So I really think we need to switch that, and we need to listen 60% and then talk, 40% or even 30%. So when I think about that, because when we're listening, we're hearing what people really need and what they want. Now, when we're listening, we also need to ensure that we're actively listening. And that's different than just hearing people. Because oftentimes when we're having conversation with people, right, we're so focused on what's my response going to be? How am I going to respond to that question that we're only hearing half of what they're saying? And then the other half is like, okay, I got to get my response together. So we miss things and then we fill in the.
Yeah. Well, no, you guys, we just froze up a little bit, but do not move. She's still here. We just froze up just a second. We're going to continue on with the conversation with Dr. Lisa Greaux. We just, technology. So we just froze up just a bit. This is such a great interview. I want to make sure that all of you are listening in and tuning in. And if you are not watching live, make sure you jump in somewhere and watch the live. You'll be able to jump in on the YouTube channel or on any of your social platforms you're watching on, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitch. And soon we will actually be streaming on the Roku channel, Fire TV, as well as streaming directly into the website, Entrepreneurlifeshow.com. So make sure you go there and you can check it out. She will be back shortly. She lost connection. So we have our guest today, which is Lisa Brooks Griot, who's widely acclaimed leadership expert and speaker. She has a lot of great resources for us and how we can equip ourselves with tools in our lives to help achieve our goals. And that is personally and professionally. We have a lot more questions for her to complete the interview. So she froze up just a little bit and dropped, but she will be back shortly. So I want you guys to hang tight. And for those who have been tuning in, you can probably notice going live that we have a new application. And because we will be starting next week, streaming, and all of our interviews will be stored and showing in routine on the Roku or Fire TV, you'll be able to watch all the past interviews there also. So if you maybe like you have that application and you're watching TV and you're just flipping through and you want to binge watch something, you'll be able to go to the application Entrepreneur Life Show, and you will be able to find that on your Roku or Fire TV channel. And you will be able to watch all of them and binge watch our shows. We have so many of them there with great interviews. But you can also then check us out on the website, Entrepreneurlifeshow.com. There's a lot of great interviews there and past guests that we have. So you can see all the past guest interviews on your YouTube channel, on our website. You can check it out. There's a lot of great past interviews and guests, and you can check out the calendar as well. And so for some of the past shows, of course, we have Leon Robinson, also known as Leon. We've had speech from Arrested Development. Who else have we had on the show? An event that I did for one of my clients, Teddy Riley, which was an amazing event where he did a speaking engagement. You can see snippets of that. Robert Richard as well. A lot of great guests. We've had some recent giveaways. So I hope that you guys definitely tune in and check out those past guests. You can connect with them and how they can inspire you. And maybe you have a similar journey of your own, and that where you need to connect with someone and connect with one of them. We've had some great wellness coaches, some authors, musicians. Maybe you're in the industry and you want to, become an author or a singer, or maybe someone in the medical field. Some really, really great past guests. Make sure you check those out. Some really great influential influencers, actors, entertainers, singers, musicians, a lot of great past guests. And also from Storage Wars, we had the auctioneers who, it's funniest, loved that show. And if you're familiar with Darren Henson, that was a really, really great interview as well. So you can watch that and how to find him. So make sure you go to entrepreneurlifeshow.com. So while we're waiting for Dr. Lisa Brooks Griot to get back on the platform, she must have lost connection. As you know, we are doing this live, and you see how technology works for us. So make sure you subscribe, entrepreneurlifeshow.com. Check out all the past interviews and the past guests. I think that you will enjoy all of them and how to connect with them. You can connect, of course, with what I do in my business. As you know, I started this podcast, again, as I said, because I am also a business owner and I'm in the accounting industry. And when I started this podcast, I thought it was a great informational resource for myself. as well as consumers. And for sponsorship, some people have asked me about that. And now that we have grown the podcast, and as you know, we're streaming simultaneously on many different platforms. So you'll see us on iHeart and Spotify. And there's a list of all of the podcast platforms that you'll find us on. We are on several different podcast platforms as well as social platforms that we're streaming on, like Twitch and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. There's a few others, but now since we will be also and have our own Roku channel and streaming there, really a great time for advertising. So if you want to advertise with us and be seen, gives you more exposure, make sure you go to the Entrepreneurlifeshow.com webpage. To the bottom, fill out the form, send all your social media apps, your whatever, your website, what you have, and we can talk to you about possible sponsorship. Maybe there's some giveaways that you would like to have to our listeners, and then that helps for exposure, as well as maybe you just have a brand or you want to us to promote something for you, or just mention you. There's so many different types of sponsorships where you can go and mentioning your business and growing your business and getting so much more exposure. And of course, if you're a published or PR agent, you have some clients that may be from different types of genres. You can also as well pitch a guest. We have some really, really great guests that we have gotten some very great public relations firms that we work with that send us a lot of great guests. So if you are a published or PR agent, then you'll want to also contact us. And if they're a great fit for the platform, of course, we will welcome them and get them on the show to also give them exposure. Just make sure you go to the entrepreneurlifeshow.com to check out the website, check out some of the past guests and the upcoming guests on the calendar. We will be taking about a 2-week break because, as you guys know, I have been streaming for about 2 years now. I'm hardly taking a day off, but it's nice to have a little bit of a break. So although we stream every Thursday, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, based here in Las Vegas, Nevada, sometimes we want a little bit of break too. So we will be taking a little bit of a break, a 2-week break, and while we're getting all of our channel set up for Roku, possibly we're pitching the show to some other network and hoping they will pick it up. So we'll be streaming almost everywhere. Daily Motion is our next, which we're working on now with a partnership and potentially streaming there as well, streaming live. So for all of you that you can find us just about everywhere nationally. So we are streaming globally now, not just here in the US. So hopefully wherever you're watching from, we look forward to connecting with you. And we do accept guests also from other countries, not just here in the US. We have them from all over, Brazil and Australia. So if you want exposure here in the US, or maybe you have somebody who is getting into the entertainment business and they're transitioning and they're pretty widely known in another country, but they are wanting to transition here to the US and looking for agents or publicists or PR agents or actors, performers, singers, and maybe you have a great following there, but now you're trying to transition. It's also another great way for you to transition and get exposure. Just connect with us, entrepreneurlifeshow.com. Go to the website, scroll to the bottom, and send us a message on how you can connect with us and possibly potentially be a part of the show or some partnership. So we are still waiting for Miss Lisa, Dr. Lisa Brooks Griot. Looks like she's having some technical problems, so I don't want you guys to go away. But in case she can't get back on due to the technical issues that we have, we'll have her on in another day. But this interview will remain live. This interview will be on the website, so you can at least get a lot of the information from what we have done so far and have her on the show to interview her. One moment, please. They lost connection, so we're going to send her a new invite to the link. So one sec, you guys, so we can get her back on. Thank you guys for being so patient and wonderful, and for always supporting the show. How appreciative we are of everybody and all of the downloads. So everybody who has been listening on the podcast, the downloads have been so amazing, and I get my updates all the time. And it seems like people are going back on the replay more than anything. So how I appreciate that, because that helps grow the show. Not just helping to grow the show, but for those, when we have our guests on the show and publicists send their guests, then that's just saying that you really love the guest, but as well as gaining exposure. So for those who are listening and that who might be interested in being a guest on the show and you want to pitch someone. So the downloads have been amazing. They have been great, and how appreciative. And iHeart and Spotify have been, one of the highest for the downloads. So whoever you are, even though we cannot necessarily see you on the podcast, I just thank you, because I thank you for the high fives and the hands up and the support, because we could not do this without all of you listeners. So it's so appreciative, so very appreciative and support. But Dr. Lisa Brooks Griot is trying to get right back on. As you know how technical difficulties are with technology, we are entrepreneurs and business owners. And so how we just make it all happen and transition. So I'm happy to say that if you guys just stay connected, she will be back on shortly. And of course, for those who might have just jumped on and listened to on the podcast, we have Dr. Lisa Brooks Griot. She lost her connection for just a moment, but she will be back shortly. So if you are watching on Instagram, hello, thank you. You might have noticed a new application. And if you're watching on Facebook or Twitch or Twitter or something like that, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you so much that you're taking interest. And make sure that if you are new to the show, go to entrepreneurlifeshow.com. Check out the website, the great guests that I've had on, the past guests and upcoming guests. You're going to see Robert Richard, Leon. I mean, there are just so many guests on the website that you're going to love, and upcoming guests. Make sure you check it out, subscribe. They are so influential, so much information to give. I am Rose, the host and founder of the Entrepreneur Life Show, and as well as McDonald Bookkeeping Services. So I want you, I love the listeners. I love the correspondence. I like people to tell us what you think of the show. Some of the guests that we've had on the show, comment, check it out on the YouTube channel. Dr. Lisa Brooks should be back on shortly. So hang in there, you guys, hang in there. And I see some of you on there. Hello, Heaven. Thanks for watching. So appreciative of you. And our guests will be back shortly. Thanks for tuning in. And Heavenly Sings, I hope you sing. We've actually had quite a bit of performers and some singers on the show, and some people who are performing for us, which is lovely and amazing. And so some great artists on the show where I've been able to share their music to help them get exposure. Make sure, again, you guys go to entrepreneurlifeshow.com. Check out all of the past guests, the upcoming guests on the calendar. And again, we are going to be streaming on Roku and Fire TV pretty soon. So you're going to be able to find the entrepreneurlifeshow.com, and that's going to get a lot more great exposure. But you'll also be able to check out all of the past guests we have. So you'll be able to binge watch all the podcasts. So for those who have been just downloading the podcast on one of your apps, Spotify, we're streaming on about 13 platforms right now. So you will find us on just about any podcast app that is your favorite podcast app. You will now be able to binge watch live. So for those who listen on a podcast, you can just check out the live show on the Roku Fire TV channel by checking out Entrepreneur Life Show, and check out our channel. And that will be going live within the next couple of days. But you can also binge watch by going to the website, entrepreneurlifeshow.com. Check out the website, and you can check out all the past guests, like I said, that I've had on there. Shantae Moore, such a lovely guest when she was on. Shantae Moore, such a great guest that we had on the show. As well as Darren Henson, the auctioneers from Storage Wars, also Robert Leon, also known as Leon, who we have speech from Arrested Development on the show, Robert Richard on the show. There's just a list of people, too many to mention, that I've had on the show within the last 2 years. And still we have more great guests coming for you that you'll love on the show. Just go to entrepreneurlifeshow.com. Make sure you subscribe for notifications as to who's the next guest, when's the next guest going to appear. If you want to become a sponsor to get exposure for your business, or exposure for yourself, or pitch a guest if you are a publicist PR agent, we're waiting for Dr. Lisa Brooks to get back on the show and connect. She lost a bit of the connection. But you can always, if we are unable to get her back on the show, the interview will still be here to watch on YouTube or the website or streaming on the Roku page for the future. Thanks you all guys for connection. Hi, and how are you, Cynthia? Thanks for tuning in today to the Entrepreneur Life Show. Our guest lost her connection, but she will be back. And for those who are unfamiliar with the show, Entrepreneur Life Show, go to entrepreneurlifeshow.com. Check out all the past guests and upcoming guests who you're just going to love and adore. I promise. Go to entrepreneurlifeshow.com and check out all the latest guests that we've had on the show and that we're streaming, the interview, how to connect with them. We've had some very entertaining, influential guests, some celebrities, influencers, authors, singers, entertainers, musicians, wellness, health. We've just about had it all. And we know you're going to enjoy the show. And for all the publicists and PR agents who have always given us and pitched great guests to us on the show, how we appreciate you. And make sure you please go to the page and subscribe, because we will now be on Roku, where we streaming on Roku and Fire TV. Yay, that's so exciting. That means you'll be able to watch the show live and watch the replay on your Amazon Fire Stick channel, on your Roku station, wherever you watch a movie. Just go to Entrepreneur Life Show app and you're going to see all the shows there. How great is that? Great exposure. And so for everybody who's been tuning in, how we appreciate you. Thank you. And so we're actually almost to the end of the show. So we're so sorry that it looks like Dr. Lisa Brooks Griot is having trouble getting back for technical difficulties. But for those who have been staying and holding tight with us to get her back on the show, what we will more than likely do is bring her back at a later time so that we can finish the interview with her. But this interview will still be stored on the website, entrepreneurlifeshow.com. So please check it out. And thank you guys for being so wonderful and downloading all the time. How I appreciate you so much. Check out the entrepreneurlifeshow.com, entrepreneurlifeshow.com for the upcoming guests and past guests that we've had, and watch and comment. And I hope that you enjoy those past guest interviews. And I hope to see you guys next Thursday. Have the best week. Bye.